I'm not someone who really believes in ghosts. I don't think they're real. Or at least, I've never seen anything that convinced me beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I also know I'm not smart enough to understand everything that's happened in this universe. This story isn't exactly about ghosts anyway. It's about something worse. It's about cruelty, regret, silence, and what sometimes lingers long after the moment has passed. It happened years ago, when my grandparents on my mother's side were still alive. I come from a large, loud Roman Catholic family. My grandparents were born in the 1920s, and they had 13 children, all raised on a working farm in a rural stretch of land that felt cut off from the rest of the world. My grandfather was the playful one, always laughing and roughhousing with the kids. My grandmother, though, was another story. She was strict, hard, the disciplinarian. Back then, harsh punishments were common, and she believed in them. I'm not saying it was okay, because it wasn't, but that's the kind of time it was. I've only been to that farmhouse once, about a decade ago, long after my grandparents had passed, but I still remember how it felt. Big and old and too quiet. The house sat far back from the road, surrounded by worn-down fields and fenced-in livestock pens. They'd raised cows, pigs, chickens, and had a dog named Fido, a border collie with a job to do. The house always seemed like it held its breath. My mother was one of the middle children, stuck between generations, too young for the older group, too old to truly belong with the younger ones. She always felt like an in-between, always looking out for others, but never really looked after herself. The person she was closest to was her younger brother. I'll call him Howard. They were close in a way that only siblings in the middle of a big family can be. They leaned on each other, understood things the others didn't. There was also an older sister, Marlene. My mother never had a good word to say about her. She said Marlene was cruel, but not in an obvious way, not the yelling, storming out of a room kind. Marlene's cruelty was quiet, subtle. She knew how to twist people against each other without ever raising her voice. She smiled all the time, but it never reached her eyes. Maybe she learned it from their mother, or maybe she was just made that way. Either way, my mom didn't trust her, and after what happened to Howard, she never forgave her. The year everything changed. My mom had just returned from nannying in the city for a family that treated her well. She had plans to finish high school and go off to secretarial school. College wasn't even a dream. It simply wasn't a possibility. While she'd been gone, Howard had fallen in love with a girl up the road. Her name was Diane Norman. The problem was, the Normans and my mom's family had been feuding for years. Stolen cattle, fist fights, shouting matches on the side of the road. The kind of grudge that festers through generations and starts to feel like tradition. My mom didn't care. She thought it was ridiculous, and she told Howard she was happy for him, that love, especially theirs, was worth the trouble. Everything was fine for a little while. And the holidays came, and so did Marlene. When she found out about Howard's relationship with Diane, she lost it. She stayed up all night yelling at him in the kitchen, saying he was disrespecting the family, that he didn't understand the damage he was doing. And then the next day, she was fine, laughing, smiling, acting like the night before had never happened. My mother didn't like it, but she kept her head down. What else could she do? When school started back in January, she and Howard rode the bus like always, over an hour down frozen roads. She sat near the front, trying to stay warm, trying to get through the day. That was when she heard the whispers behind her. Two girls, giggling, gossiping, and then she heard the name, Diane Norman. Her stomach turned cold. They were saying awful things, that Diane had been inappropriate with her brothers, that she'd done things no one should even think about doing, laughing like it was a joke, but my mother could tell it wasn't. These girls believed it, or wanted to. She didn't even have to guess who'd started it. Marlene. Howard hadn't heard any of it. He was in the back of the bus, staring out the window. But Diane had. And when they got to school, she was waiting for him. She accused him of starting the rumor himself, said she was ashamed. And then, right there in front of everyone, she broke up with him. Howard didn't say a word. He just turned and walked away. He barely spoke after that, barely ate. My mom tried to talk to him, but he pulled back from everyone. She even wrote a letter to Marlene, trying to confront her. No reply. Marlene was already back in the city, living her life. As January faded into February, Howard slipped further into himself. Then, one morning, my mom went down to wake him like she always did. His bed was empty. He was gone. There were no cell phones, no organized police presence, but the car was missing, which gave them something to follow. They found it 2 weeks later. A farmer searching for a lost cow came across it deep in the woods, miles from the farm. Howard was inside. He had taken his own life. Carbon monoxide poisoning. He was 17. My mother never confronted Marlene directly. Their mother wouldn't have allowed it. And Marlene, well, she'd always been untouchable, the golden child, the clever one, the one who could do no wrong. And there were still younger siblings to feed, still animals to tend, still work to be done. So my mom went back to school. She kept her head down, graduated early, took a job in another city. When offered the chance to live with Marlene or with another sister, she chose the one farther away. She stopped going to church, bought a big German Shepherd, started going out at night, doing everything she could to stop herself from remembering. But 2 years later, she went home again for just a few days. Her youngest sister Noreen was graduating, and she wanted to be there for her. Marlene came too. They didn't speak. My mom barely looked at her. But Marlene smiled like nothing was wrong, like none of it had ever happened. That night, the women in the family sat around the kitchen table, drinking tea and talking. The younger kids were asleep. The men were out. It should have been quiet, but Marlene and their mother started talking about the Normans again, laughing, insulting Diane, rewriting the story like it was something to laugh at. My mother told them to stop. Marlene rolled her eyes and said my mom had gotten too full of herself with her little city job. And then she said, very calmly, that if Diane hadn't been such a loose girl, Howard would still be alive. The room went cold, not figuratively, literally. My mother says the air turned icy. Goosebumps broke out across her arms. The old potbelly stove in the corner, which normally heated the whole house, suddenly couldn't touch the chill. And just as their mother opened her mouth to scold her for standing up to Marlene, something happened. There was a crash, a sound like a bookcase falling, like a table being thrown. It came from the center of the room, but nothing had fallen, nothing was broken, no one had moved. It was just there, and it was loud. My mother says it was the loudest sound she's ever heard in her life. No one spoke. Marlene looked pale. Their mother said nothing. Another sister quickly changed the subject and tried to pretend it didn't happen. But something in the air had shifted. Later, when it was time for bed, my mom followed Marlene up the stairs. At the top was a wooden door they always kept closed to trap the heat. As Marlene reached for the knob, she slipped. Her hand missed the door. Her heel caught the step. She tumbled down half the staircase and nearly crashed into my mother. And then she started screaming. She said someone had pushed her. Over and over again. I was pushed, but everyone in the house had seen it. My mother hadn't touched her, hadn't been anywhere near her. Still, Marlene insisted. She was pushed. My mom left the next morning. She doesn't speak to Marlene anymore, but she swears that her brother Howard was in that house that night, and that he had the last word.